Well, I just finished doing that awful rendition of When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. And I want to apologize to all of you and explain that, as you've probably discerned by now, I have multiple personality disorder. One of my disordered personalities thinks that it can sing. This is the responsible personality right here, and I'm telling you, anytime you see any indication that there's a song, do not look at it, just go right on to the next one. It's just that multiple personality disorder coming through. And sometimes Francois, I know that people say, I don't want to hear about your dog. Well, if you don't like my dog, I don't have any use for you, and neither does he. He's not perfect, Lord knows he's French, but he's special to me. So if you don't like my dog, please don't tell me about it, okay? Just pretend that you do. Thanks. Now, I want to talk about this thing in Tennessee. And as you know, because I posted about this the other day, I was very disheartened by what they did. I didn't like it. I think that what they've really done is made national heroes out of these fellows. But I want to talk about a slightly different aspect of it. So there were two black fellows that were thrown out, and one white person, this lady. Sorry, I got an itch. This lady who survived. So I knew as soon as I saw how that broke down that the media and everybody who didn't like the fact that they were expelled would say, it's racism. There's no other explanation, it's just racism. Now, one thing I have to say about these Republicans have a tin ear. Of course people would think it was racism. Didn't they think about that when they were doing it? Or do they not care that they're playing into the caricature of Southern Republicans in this day and age? And frankly, to a lot of Republicans generally, because so many of the issues that bother them, whether it's crime, or whether it's welfare, or whether it's abortion, whether it's aid to the reverse tax credit, which is just a handout to poor women, in particular black women, for having kids. The whole raft of things that relate, that are basically have a racist element to them, and so they should be sensitive to that, unless they just don't care and they just figure they're just going to get anybody who has any sort of a racial bone in his body to run up and join the maggots. But I'm concerned that every time there's something happens where a black person is treated unfairly, the immediate explanation is, well, it's because he's black, even though there's no objective evidence that the event happened because the person was black. You see this all the time with these, black person is roughed up by the police and they say, well, it's because he was black. Well, we don't know that. We don't have any, there's been no evidence that the people who roughed up the particular black person on this one occasion were racist, and that the reason they did it was because the person was black. So, there's lots of reasons why the police do things which they shouldn't do. A lot of it has to do with they think they're not getting proper respect from a person regardless of their color. But on this particular instance, I knew that as soon as I saw that it was two black people were expelled and a white person wasn't, that the overwhelming sentiment in the media, and I'm not, I don't like these people picking on the media, but sometimes the media deserves it. I knew that this would be the thing that commentators, the media itself, Google, every place I've looked, all said the same thing. Oh, it's obviously racism. I said to myself, I sometimes talk to myself, I said, I don't think it is racism at all. I think it has to do with the bullhorns. And the reason I said that was because, first of all, when I heard they were using a bullhorn on the floor of the House during a legislative session, I said, well, that's what has these people so mad. And you can imagine if that Marjorie Merriweather, or I think it's her name, Green, that idiot, were to go on the floor of the House of Representatives during a session and start screaming into a bullhorn. They'd drag her off the floor and they'd throw her in the slammer. They should do that anyway, just because she's so annoying. But they wouldn't sit there and say, oh, tisk, tisk. They would come and say, get the hell off of the floor. What the hell do you think you're doing? And they'd arrest her on the spot. They should, like I said, they should do that anyway. But that's what would happen there. So I said, this is not about race. This is about the bullhorns. That's what I said to myself. And the reason I said that was because I was looking at the still photos of these people standing at the podium. And the two black guys were on one side, one of them was holding the bullhorn. The woman was on the other side, and she didn't have a bullhorn. And so I suspected that what happened was the one black guy was using the bullhorn. He handed it to the other black guy. He used the bullhorn. They didn't reach across the podium to hand the bullhorn to this woman. And that there were a certain number of legislators who said, well, I'm not going to vote to expel her because she didn't use the bullhorn. And sure enough, today when I dug and dug, and they finally got to some place where I could find some interviews with the people who voted to not expel her, and they all said the same thing. It was the bullhorn issue. So that shit, the media and the comedy should not be running around saying things are racism or racist, or they could say maybe it's racism, but they act like that's the only possible explanation when the bullhorn issue was sitting right there in front of you, and obviously was an issue that should have at least been considered. And certainly before they ran off saying these people were all racist who voted that way, they should interview them, which they eventually did. So, and I found those interviews. But it's just disturbing to me. Again, it's laziness, and it also shows how deeply divided we are in this country on nonsensical issues. That makes no sense to constantly say something every time something bad happens to a black person that gets the news, that it's because the black person is black. That's, firstly, it's not logical. Second place, it's not necessarily true. Now, if something does happen, if it turned out, for example, that in reality these people spoke to their friends and they said, you know, I said it was because of the bullhorns, but the reality is I just don't like black people. Well, that's a different issue altogether. And if it were to come out that that was the case, well, then that's despicable. But we shouldn't be assuming automatically that that's the only possible explanation because there's color issues possibly involved. So, you know where my politics are generally, but I don't like this political correctness. I don't like this business of, DeSantis calls it wokeness. I'm not sure what exactly woke means, but that this whole concept of having a preordained concept of what explanations are for things that happen, it's not logical. You'd never get away with it in a court of law. And I hope that they're more careful, and I hope that you don't get mad at me for saying these things. What am I talking about? If I worried about that, I'd never have this podcast to begin with. Anyway, have a nice day. I now have to go do some legal work and earn the ability to keep this thing going because your cards and letters have not had any checks in them. Not a good sign. Bye.